Yeah, good morning all. Thanks for coming. Just in like the spirit of how everything started yesterday, just want to share a little bit about myself. I'm a local lad that kind of grew up just a little bit south of here on Goonganji in Indigenous country. Spent a lot of time just running around mangroves, rainforest, out on coral reefs and things like that. So it seemed like a real natural progression trying to go into biology and a career into that. Good morning all. How you going? Come and have a seat. No, you're all right. So basically for the last 20 years I've worked in Great Barrier Reef tourism, practicing site stewardship at that local scale to boost coral reef resilience. And the main reason for this is, to promote and conserve, the Great Barrier Reef, this World Heritage icon. Now, a lot of the work that I've kind of developed has now been implemented in a framework which being supplied by the Tourism Reef Protection Initiative to achieve scale all up and down the Great Barrier Reef. And also, a lot of the work I have done that I'm going to show today has happened on Goonganji and Irukandji Sea country, so I'd like to acknowledge those communities, pay respects to the elders past and present. Now, site stewardship's been in tourism for several decades. I mean, one of the earliest examples is Green Island in the 1960s. It was quite famous for having that first really reported outbreak of Crown-of-Thorns Starfish. The local tourism operator at the time, Hales, they actually were using divers, implement their own control program, divers and hooks to go and to remove Crown-of-Thorns to protect their glass-bottom boat routes, but also their guest expectations too. And around in the mid-60s, they were taking around about 27,000 cots out a year and things like that. They also formed a nice collaboration with Queensland Fisheries, right? So you have these two local scientists there that were using the Green Island as a base to go and explore this kind of outgoing outbreak, this dynamic out to surrounding reefs, but also trying to get to some of that underlying causation as well. So with site stewardship, it's often perceived as the action, but it's a bit more holistic than that. I mean, I really do like this definition. You've got some really nice keywords in there. You've got the responsible use, protection of the natural environment, through conservation, sustainable practices, to enhance resilience and also human well-being. Now, I think this definition really translates well into tourism today, particularly in a rapidly changing climate. Because climate is impacting the Great Barrier Reef, and it is doing it by, pretty well impacting the big three, right? So, you got your cyclones. So, for example, that Cyclone Yasi, that impacted over a quarter of the Great Barrier Reef. We've had several, thermal widespread stress events, and Crown-of-Thorns Starfish outbreaks, primary outbreaks around every 15 years, but secondary outbreaks last for 10 years in their transgression down the reef. Right? So what we're saying is multiple reefs are experiencing multiple disturbances and accumulated impacts from that. But reefs are recovering. We heard Roger say before, there is recovery on reefs, right? It does happen. But the problem is with these increasing pressures, and this summer's just highlighted again with these disturbances that we've had now. So this is why practicing key site stewardship actions on areas such as high-value tourism sites, key source reefs, reefs of significant cultural value are incredibly important. And more reef off Cairns, just out here, kind of symbolises all three of those attributes. I mean, it is a high-value tourism site. It is a source reef. And to the Goonganji people, it's one of their most significant coral reefs in their sea country, and it is really part of their, quite a few of their Dreamtime stories. This is Reef Magic Pontoon, where I've spent pretty well my last 20 years working on that patch of reef off there. And on that patch of reef out there, we're on there doing our activities every day. Now, a really important component of doing any sort of site stewardship action is knowing your reef. I mean, knowing how it responds to disturbance and how it recovers, right? So even when you look at this kind of outer reef here, you can see we've got that outer wall there, that's one habitat, the outer reef wall. We've got the one behind, the shallow part, the reef flat, and then we've got our lagoonal area around here, the pontoon, and those areas too. So I'm going to give a few examples why we've implemented some of the actions that we've done over the time out there. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's have a look at the outer reef wall, and we'll look at the reef wall coral cover trend, from 2009 to 2023. So on the y-axis there, you got your mean percentage coral cover. That was estimated through reef health impact surveys done every 3 months over those 13-year period. You can see back in 2009-10, coral cover pretty high, right? Incredibly high. Then we had Cyclone Yasi in 2011, caused like drastic drop, high coral mortality. Roger touched on it earlier in his talk in there. And then we've seen really good, steady increase in coral cover since. I mean, even like the mass bleaching event of 2017 had, a slight drop. Jasper's had a bit more significant impact. It'll come out in the next round of surveys out there as well. But the main thing is to say we've done no recovery actions on that outer wall. That's all just natural resilience, everything coming back to the reef doing its own. However, though, Cyclone Yasi did produce, to the side there, you can see it on the left or on this side, those large coal rubble fields, right? So when we're talking coal rubble, we're talking those kind of loose, there it is, loose kind of coral skeletons, 15, 20 centimetres in length, stuff like that, unconsolidated, they move around a bit in storms. We've even got like patches of rubble out there which are like 13 years after the disturbance and have not changed. So you get really low recruitment. If you do, don't survive, really low coral cover. So to boost resilience in this area, this is where we trialled the Mars-assisted reef restoration system. So that's those modular hexagonal structures that interlock together. These are the first ones that went in the whole Great Barrier Reef in June 2020. There's a few people in this room that were involved in that. That's the same picture, what it looks like 3.5 years later. Right, so you can see we've had that really good increase in coral cover. Right, so in that 2-year period, we did five builds for a total of 439 reef stars with about 6,500 coral fragments of opportunity. Coral fragments opportunity, they're fragments that have been like broken off of the parent colony and no longer attached. So sourced all in that area. One thing I did is we identified all those fragments. So we know we have about 60 species on there. So we do know those densities, getting from Peter Mummy's talk yesterday. So what you can see with that diversity is it's actually like created, it's not only like variation in growth forms, but we've got also variation in life history characteristics. You've got corals out there that are broadcast spawners, corals out there are brooders, but this project has been very successful in transforming a rubble-dominated area into a live hard coral-dominated area. Looks like a natural reef in a very short time frame that would not normally happen in the natural environment. So a very successful tool, has been utilised in site stewardship actions. I see Taste there over at Green Island, so from Hastings Reef all the way down to to the Keppels, like Tarquin was talking about yesterday. But let's use another example now. Let's go and have a look at our reef flat. So that habitat up behind there, we can see our coral cover trend. Not as high as the wall back in 2009 and 10. Cyclone Yasi, slight impact. We saw a really good increase in coral cover following that until we had 2017. And that mass bleaching event in 2017 caused that significant drop in coral cover or high mortality, and been pretty slow to increase since then. 2017, a lot of people in this room will know that this is when everyone got really kind of interested about all these impacts, right? Back-to-back bleaching events, Cyclone Debbie and the Whitsundays, right? And then we also had a full emerging COTS outbreak in full swing in the northern and central part of the reef. So everyone was very interested in where there was live coral and also in natural coral resilient processes too, right? So this is when I first started talking to this gentleman here, Professor Peter Harrison. They were looking for places in Cairns which had good coral cover. I said you should come and see the outer wall of Moore Reef. It's recovering quite well from Yasi. So got good reproductive stock there. So and Peter pioneered that larval reseeding work. So basically that is where you collect wild coral spawn, rear that larvae for 5-6 days, then do a target release. The second year we worked with Peter, he was wanting to focus a lot more around Moore Reef and our pontoon. And basically what he wanted to do was try several different release methods. The one I was really interested in trying was this one, where we did a mass release. Now, we had one coral larval right close to that reef flat, right? And about 6 days later, we estimated we had about 28 million larvae. We waited right till about slack water, and then we released it on slack water just prior to the ebb flow. So on that slack water, the larvae sunk down, and with that gentle ebb flow carried that larvae right out across that reef flat. Now, did it actually work? Well, we never quantified it, unfortunately, so we don't know. But we can see we have got a good kind of increase in coral cover a couple of years later. So whether this is from natural recovery processes or larval reseeding or both, the thing is, larval reseeding is a very good technique. It's a good community engagement technique. It's been trialled in lots of different ways. I mean, Australian Institute of Marine Science did a beautiful one with the Traditional Custodians, Wapabara down in the Keppels. You got the boats for corals down in the Whitsundays, been very good in ever since Cyclone Debbie, sorry. So been very good in that regard. Let's have a look at another example though. Let's go and have a look at getting back into that reef lagoon, just behind, in front of the pontoon and areas like that. So the story there, you can see it's similar to the flat, right? Not bad coral cover. Yasi actually caused quite a lot of fragmentation, right? Particularly staghorn corals. We saw coral cover really increase quite significantly in those years following. 2017, there was mortality, quite significant from Debbie, and there's been not bad increase in recovery since. We've done no site-assisted recovery actions in the lagoon. However, what we have done, back in 2009, I noticed Crown-of-Thorns Starfish numbers were increasing. So in 2010, we formed a collaboration with the Australian Marine Park tourism operators to train young divers to go and locate Crown-of-Thorns and inject them. In that 3 years we run it, we injected over 2,700 cots. What I found interesting was that over 3/4 of them were juveniles. That's less than 150 millimetres, these juveniles. And they were increasing in number every year. So in 2014, we actually formed our own kind of control research program, just focused on those juveniles between 5 and 150 millimetres. We used bulk transects so we could quantify everything. Been a very successful program. Still runs to this day. Through the Tourism Reef Protection Initiative, we've even expanded it out, our fine-scale work out to 9 other reefs that we regularly visit. Some real key findings from this thing. I mean, at Moore Reef, since 2014, we've collected over 12,000 juvenile cots. The highest density was 129 individuals per hectare back in 2016. And like most adults, they mainly prey on the fast-growing corals. What I found extremely interesting was that 95% of our small ones, less than 70 millimetres, were all found on one type of coral, your bottlebrush or your compound branching corals. And also from a collaboration with AIMS, with Sven and Jason, we've been providing them with plankton series for the last 10 years, plankton samples. And through eDNA, we found we have a constant larval supply over the summer. These are the first 3 years we did it, 15, 16, 17. On the y-axis there, it's got larval density identified through the eDNA. This work was published along with the juvenile numbers too in Sven's Christmas paper. But what this is really telling us is we've got a constant larval supply. We've also got, what I've also done from the Tourism Reef Protection Initiative, I've actually gone and measured the percentage of bottlebrush coral that I have in that reef compared to the other 8 other reefs that we visit. We have the highest amount of bottlebrush coral. So what I'm saying is we've got good larval supply. We've got good food for coral feeding juveniles, right? So if we did not implement this program back in 2014, we wouldn't have that kind of live coral that we have today. So it's been a very good program to, to mitigate and to, protect against future disturbances. Now, you're starting to see where I'm kind of going with this talk, knowing your reef, you can make really informed decisions where you want to go. What I really wanted to do is, in the last 10 years of working with traditional custodians really closely, particularly I see Victor there, he's been over there within our education programs. I feel like we're only telling one side of the story. We're just telling the academic knowledge. We're not telling the traditional owner ecological knowledge as well. So we decided to form this project called Coolbull. Now, Coolbull's an Irukandji word that means spirit of the sea country. The three prongs of the spear there represent the three organisations. So you've got mine, GBR Biology, you got Reef Restoration Foundation, and most importantly, we had the Irukandji Land and Sea Country Rangers by Darwul Aboriginal Corporation. So what we wanted to do is our goal was to try and combine these two knowledge systems in a monitoring program and have our teams also go out there and explore and monitor the reefs in a number of different ways and things like that, and then come up with a proactive functional decision tree that could determine what actions we would actually do on a reef. But our first challenge is basically how do you start to incorporate some of this traditional ecological knowledge? And we thought, well, we're mainly about monitoring, knowing the reefs. So the Irukandji community come back and said a seasonal calendar. This artwork here was done by that brilliant gentleman in the back there, Tarquin Singleton, who did the awesome keynote yesterday. So in the seasonal calendar, you can see what it's done. It's like you're introducing your two main seasons, wet and dry. You've got your sub-seasons in there, right? So it's introducing language. The other thing it's doing is introducing what's happening on the land is what's influenced out the sea. So this flowering plant over here is an indication of this animal migration or a spawning event there. What we want to do is try to, in future, incorporate this into our more traditional monitoring program so we can monitor these indicators over time, especially in the hands of climate change. The other thing we kind of did with this too was produce that functional decision tree. We come up with 72 questions, right? What these questions are doing, they broke up into 5 groups. It's to gauge your kind of cultural awareness, what you know about that reef culturally. What's your engagement like with the traditional custodians? What those biological and natural resilience indicators are to make some determined actions on what you would do. We use this decision tree to develop 3 really detailed site stewardship plans for sites on Hastings, Saxon and Norman Reef within Irukandji Sea Country. One of those reefs was Hastings Reef. Hastings Reef, the site we go to, had very, very significant value to the Irukandji people, had really low coral cover from accumulated disturbances, had really good high areas of live coral rock. So having these areas of live coral rock, the trees suggested that you would either do outplants or nurseries using the brilliant coral nurture program or the Reef Restoration Foundation and using the trees and things like that. Or larval seeding was another way to go. So we decided to formalise these actions, and this is Tarquin did his talk yesterday where we talked about the Reef Cooperative. So we formalised that Reef Cooperative to carry out these actions on. So at Hastings Reef, we wanted to do larval seeding. The problem with Hastings is low coral cover, not a lot of stock, right? We knew Saxon Reef had really good diversity, good coral cover, and also really good prior spawning events. But also through our work, we also feel logistically, it was actually easier to go to Moore Reef where we had some knowledge and things like that, collect the spawn there, rear the larvae, then translocate it up to Hastings Reef and do that on there. Now, the biggest thing about Reef Cooperative, if you're looking at this, very important to mention the sea countries, things like that. We always make sure we have consent. Everything we do, we have prior informed consent. We heard Bob say that yesterday. And one thing I want to say is consent has an expiry date. So you always have to keep asking all the time and keep informing, keep going back to traditional custodians. So the beautiful thing about the Reef Cooperative, you got two traditional custodians as part of that. The other thing that we have done is also we had really good sizable rubble patches there too. So we knew we could put in reef stars. So we put 200 reef stars, similar problem. Hastings didn't have a lot of coral fragments of opportunity, but we knew from our work that Saxon Reef had really high. So we collected from Saxon Reef and placed on Hastings. And as I say, we're doing this constant work, with traditional owners, traditional custodians, always two-way sharing. Partnership is key, two-way sharing, two-way learning. The next logical step, and Tarquin touched on this yesterday, was we would start the reef intervention training program, right? So this is where we started with 3 Irukandji rangers, 3 Gungandji rangers, And we're training them not just in like water skills, they have good water skills, but diving practices, all sorts of monitoring practices, how to like do COTS control, rubble stabilisation, larval seeding, this whole host of different like site-assisted recovery techniques. But our main goal is we don't actually want to like just build skills. This program is designed to train leaders. Right, so we want leaders. So we've got leaders in that field. They can go back to their own sea country. We want to try and create scale up and down the Great Barrier Reef. You know, you can implement your own actions on your country, how to form beautiful collaborations with researchers or tourism operators. And this is how we can really achieve scale on site stewardship actions all along the width and the breadth of the, of the Great Barrier Reef. So just in kind of summary, or kind of where I'm going with site stewardship, like I say, I break it up into four kind of main components. You know, like I say, you need that intimate knowledge. You need to know how your reef is. That allows you to make really informed decisions. You know, if you can make really informed decisions, then you can also inform collaboration. Very important to have collaboration, particularly with traditional owners. And it was touched on in the panel discussion yesterday as well, mutually beneficial is key. You know, you're talking shared outcomes, shared learning, shared costs, shared resources, everyone benefits from the relationship really key. And most importantly, tell the story, right? We've done this in numerous different ways. We've done documentaries, movies, mainstream media, social media, the whole way. But one of the best platforms we have in tourism is on our vessels every day. We have an audience from all around Australia and all around the world. And they really want to know, we talk to people all the time, they really want to know what kind of, how the reef is going, what challenges does it face, you know, what are some of those beautiful stories, but also what actions have been taken or doing. So having site stewardship actions is just another story, right, that you use in every day to connect your guest. Because if you connect your guests to the reef, they form a love affair for the reef, that deep connection. Got that deep connection, you got empowerment, and with empowerment, that can hopefully lead to the biggest thing that we need, a reduction in emissions, you know, take away the greatest threat, which is climate change to the Great Barrier Reef. Just a quick wrap up, just to say thank you. Got to thank the major funders, of course. Australian Government through the Reef Authority have funded the Tourism Reef Protection Initiative since 2021. Reef Trust Partnership and the Great Barrier Reef Foundation funded Coolball. Cotton On Foundation, of course, fund the Reef Cooperative. Reef Cooperative, that's our middle group there. Like I say, 2 traditional owner groups, Citizens, Mars, and myself. But most of all, I'd like to thank everybody that I've worked with all over the years and will do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric, for that very inspiring presentation. We did start a few minutes late, but I would like to give people online or in the room the opportunity to ask questions of Eric, if you have any based on his presentation. And while you're doing that, we'll invite our next presenter to start making their way up to stage. So any questions for Eric? And I'm going to wander around with the microphone. Great.
Great talk, Eric. So when you had your fragments of opportunity at Moore Reef, you actually took ones that were from Moore Reef to put onto Moore Reef.
Yes.
And that's how you got such a great diversity of the recruitment. In cases where you have no reef there to provide the fragments, how do you make how do you get your opportunities, fragments of opportunity then?
Yeah, so like with Hastings Reef, one thing with the Coolball project, we want to have a variety of mechanisms. We looked at how well reefs spawned. We looked at, like settlement rates. We looked at all different predators there. The other thing that I really wanted to do is when we're actually doing our photo transects and looking for percentages of coral colour, I also counted fragments of opportunity and work out densities per metre squared. So I knew Hastings had a really low, but Saxon had a high. But you still got to go through the permitting process, like everything you do, because you are translocating between reefs. This one wasn't translocating on the same country. But like a lot of the coral spawn stuff, reef does source another reef. So just having that knowledge allows you to make the informed decision, which is cost effective. Because at the end of the day, everything's got to be cost effective as well. Otherwise, site stewardship and all these actions don't work. So, yeah, I found the easiest way, probably just from being a scientist, is to measure things. And if you got that, then you can go from there. But thanks, Maria. Good question.
Good morning, Chelsea from Foster Group Consulting. How did you increase your biodiversity or genetical material in your cross planting?
Are we talking about the reef stars, that diversity there? So it was just based on morphological identification, based on time. I know that's changed a little bit, what we're calling different species and things now. But the thing is, based on that morphology, I know what we called, what we did, when we did, and we still have that there, and that's where we had that representation of 60 species. I just wanted to go that way because what I've seen with a lot of the different site-assisted recovery programs on the reef is there has not been a lot of ID down to that species level. So I wanted to have an indication of what we actually had, and listen to Peter's talk yesterday on allele effects and things like that. I think it's very important to start knowing those densities as well, particularly in these restoration type things. Genetics would be another one lovely to go into. Got to find a bit extra cash, of course, but that's always a good way to go.
Hello, Eric. I'm John Lee from Footprint Energy. Quick question. Is the framework and the fixtures, are they biodegradable?
On the reef stars?
Yes.
No. So there's steel structures. There's even some plastic in cable ties. They do get incorporated in the reef. So the steel would take years to break down.
Yeah, so steel is a natural element, but the ties are...
The ties are plastic. So myself and Mars as well have done a lot of work pioneering this space. We've looked at 22 other alternatives and things like that, and we keep coming back to the cable ties because they're mostly efficient, but there's still research in this space. We do want to move away from plastic, always think of moving away from steel as well. So, and reducing that whole carbon footprint too.
Well, thank you. We have unfortunately run out of time for questions now, but I'm sure, Eric, you're going to be around for a little bit longer. People can come up to you in the breaks. Thank you so much again for your presentation today.
Thank you.